I think food is culture,
Hmm.
and cultures adapt and change over time. And a big thing of that is influence of whether, if a country is being occupied or people are fleeing their homeland or people are just moving. The one thing that they bring with them is food because it's a one sense of culture along with, for example, music that you can bring with you and have a sense of home wherever you are.
So feel me when I bring it, sing it loud. I'm from the loot and I'm proud. Run a mile for the cause. I'm right.
Hey guys, it's your girl Nakama, your favorite Jew from the Lou. Welcome back to my podcast. So today we're really lucky. We have a friend of mine, Ben Bacino. Welcome.
Thank you.
And so I like to do a little intro in the beginning of each episode. And even though most of my guests aren't celebrities, I like to give them a little celebrity intro. So I usually ask them for like fun facts, a little cute blurb or whatever. But when I asked Ben, he just said, I'm a regular ass guy. So that's actually perfect because this is what this is about. We are similar to like the concept of Humans of New York, just chilling, talking, and getting to know people. It's the podcast of the people.
Love it.
Yeah. So, welcome. Have you done a podcast before? Or am I your very first podcast?
No, we are popping my podcast cherry.
Oh, love it. Okay. Starting out strong. So we actually found out a fun fact about Ben. He and I started schmoozing, and he told me that he was an honorary Jew. I was like, oh, are you now? How fun. Okay.
Emphasis on honorary.
Right. So I was like, what makes you an honorary Jew?
Well, my grandmother on my
Mm-hmm.
mother's side is Jewish. She was raised Jewish. So, as I understand, that makes my mother Jewish,
Mm-hmm.
which would then make me Jewish. Is that
Mm-hmm.
correct?
That is correct. Which means he's not an honorary Jew. He is, in fact, just a legit, straight up Jew.
I hold on to the honorary title because I'm not practicing.
Well, you don't need to.
And, well, I don't feel comfortable infringing on people that practices beliefs when it's not something that I necessarily practice myself.
It's very respectful of you.
But I do appreciate Jewish culture
Mm-hmm.
and I love the food as well.
And that's exactly what we're going to talk about because once he told me that he had this like Jewish heritage, obviously the main thing that you're going to have to try is challah.
Hmm.
And I believe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you've never had challah that was homemade
No, never.
before.
Hmm.
Okay, so then we couldn't just do it regular. We had to give him a challenge because that makes it so much more interesting. So my mom and I are very competitive, and we both make awesome challah. I'm not gonna lie, my mom's is fire. Like I can't even deny it. It's so good. And then obviously when you don't have to make food, it just tastes so much better when someone else makes it for you. So you had my mom's 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
You had mine earlier this week,
Hmm. Had a
and
slice
I've
of
been
yours this
waiting.
morning.
You did?
I did.
Okay, it was still good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's still actually really soft.
Well, good.
Yeah. They were both delicious.
Okay.
And please don't make me pick a favorite.
Please pick a favorite.
I not just because I'm on your podcast, I might have to say it's yours. The difference, I mean, I noticed a difference between the two of them,
Okay.
where your mother's is a little sweeter and
Hmm.
yours is, like you said, a little more buttery, but a little richer.
Yep.
I also noticed your mom's is a little, yours is a little denser
Hmm.
in a good way, and I liked that. Compared to your mom's is a little more delicate.
It's like fluffy, very
Yeah.
light.
Um, so I can't pick if I'm on your podcast, I'm going to say yours, but
Mm.
no, I necessarily couldn't pick
I feel like
one
you're
that I
just
like
kind
the
of like
best.
kissing up a little bit. That's okay. I
We're
accept
we're
that.
starting us off on a nice note. How about that?
I love that. Okay. Well, if anyone wants, let me know, leave a message, and I will maybe post the recipe. It's not mine. I got it from someone else. So it's not like I own it or anything, but there's something about challah that's like absolutely magical. I can't explain it. But like, let's say my mom's recipe, for example. If I follow her recipe, I'm in her kitchen, she's literally over my shoulder, following the exact ingredients. There's no way that ours will taste the same. I don't know why.
Is there a reason, or is
Magic.
that just the extra touch
It's
that,
magic.
yeah?
It's magic.
So do you
Something about
guys
challah.
do you guys use the same recipe, or were those two
Well,
different
I
recipes?
refuse to use her recipe because it really pisses me off that mine doesn't taste like hers. So I'm like, absolutely not. I'm just going to pick a different recipe.
Yeah, but it's just the recipe. Once you
Hmm.
make it, yours tastes like yours.
That's true.
Hmm.
But don't like feeling like I'm second place.
Well, there's no such thing as second place. It's just two different variations of the same thing, the same good.
Mm, okay. You're being very diplomatic, which I appreciate.
I mean, I think that anybody can cook. Anybody can put their impression on a recipe, and I think that's what makes it so special, and that's what makes food so special, is that when you put a little bit of yourself into the food, it's gonna automatically distinguish it from somebody else's without changing any of the recipe or realistically any of the cooking times. It's the actual fact that your hands are in the food versus somebody else's, and you're leaving a different imprint than theirs.
Yeah, I agree. It's just really cool because it's like a tradition that's like passed down from like mother to daughter
Mhm.
through generations. I'm not saying that guys don't make challah. I'm sure they do, but it definitely like with it, Judaism is definitely more of like a feminine tradition and just really special time. Like St. Louis, I live in U City, also known as Jew City. And my grandmother back in the day, like there was a lot of women who just didn't make challah. And so like part of Shabbos, like, starting Friday night through the end of Saturday, we celebrate like the Sabbath and like it's just a day of rest. And it's a day of good food and family and just chilling. And it's literally the best. And so my grandmother used to make like hundreds of challahs for women in the community.
Wow.
And then they would come to her house and they would gossip and chit chat while they picked up their challahs. So my grandmother knew everything about everyone, which meant that I got to know everything about everyone, which was awesome.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's very similar, kind of reminds me of Italian culture,
Mm-hmm.
where as opposed to Saturday, it's Sunday, being
Mm-hmm.
the Lord's Day,
Mm-hmm.
but the Italians will spend all Sunday making Sunday dinner, making a Sunday sauce, Sunday gravy, that everyone's going to come together and eat that together on Sunday night, just as you're all going to come together on
Have
Saturday
you
night.
followed the page on Instagram or they have a podcast as well, Growing Up Italian?
No, I haven't.
It's
Mhm.
they say Italians just don't get enough love. So they have like a whole page about it. And I went to Italy last year for my 26th birthday. And so I just totally fell in love with like the Italian culture and the
Mhm.
food. And I think I must have been Italian in a previous life. That's what it feels like. But you're really the blend of both worlds because you have the Jewish heritage, but you also have the Italian heritage.
Mhm. Well, to correct you, Sicilian heritage.
Oh, I'm
So my
sorry.
great-grandfather immigrated from Bergio, Sicily.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we actually went to Sicily last summer as a family to reconnect with our Italian heritage and our Italian cousins and aunts and uncles, and ate food with them and traveled around, watched cheese get made in a farmhouse and that kind of thing. So it was very interesting to get kind of back to those roots,
Yeah.
but also seeing how food plays a part in every activity that we did with our Sicilian cousins. It was always centered around food.
Oh, you had cousins there
Hmm.
who still live there.
Yeah, so my dad went when he was my age. He studied abroad when he was in school, and
Mhm.
then he went back, and my grandpa and uncle went with him to Sicily to meet the cousins. So my dad's generation, there's about three or four of his generation um, brothers over there, and their children are about my age. So it was kind of a match of generations where my grandpa and his cousins, and my dad and uncle and their cousins, and then me and my cousins, and kind of all those similar generations around one food or one table, all eating the same food and
Yeah.
connecting in that way.
Those are the best memories, like, ever. My grandmother just passed away this past, October, and my grandfather passed away when I was 19, and I just remember when I was little and they were both alive, like, just generations of, like, being around the same table.
Hmm.
Like, I just felt so safe no matter what was going on in the world, like, having my family around me was everything, and so, like, now people are all scattered, like, I have cousins and my brothers, like, nobody lives together really in the same city. I do still have a lot of family here, but it's just not the same,
Hmm.
and, like, I still have that memory of what was, but I just think about, like, my kids and, like, they're not gonna have that same multi-generational upbringing, which I think is really sad.
It is sad, but it kind of gives you the ability to take what you appreciated from your childhood and try to keep that going with your kids, but also make sure that you can continue that interconnectedness through generations. You might not
Mhm.
have the same everybody at the same table, but they were all at that table once, and that table lives on, if you will. Might not be the same table, but it's the family table.
That's true. And
Hmm.
food can be the way that we can keep it on. And like bringing all those recipes from like different generations together
Hmm.
is a way to like keep on. the
Yeah.
traditions.
Some of my earliest memories with my grandpa are standing around the kitchen table making lasagna, making meatballs,
Homemade, like
homemade.
even
Yeah.
the noodles?
Well, not the noodles.
Okay.
We're not we're not that ambitious.
All right.
But yeah, I mean everything from scratch, and then we'd freeze it and keep it, and then take it out when we needed it, and we'd take it on trips so that when we'd be with our friends on like a ski trip, we could pull our lasagna out of the fridge, out of the freezer, and have that together with everybody, and extend that piece of our family to others.
That's really sweet.
Hmm.
So we're going to jump right into our first conversation that I'm so curious about. You mentioned it to me like months ago, and I on purpose didn't ask you more because I wanted my reaction to be like authentic for this conversation right here and now.
Hmm.
So you mentioned that we obviously both love food, and then you're a history buff. And so you talked about how depending, I'm gonna briefly say it and then you can correct me about how depending on what countries conquered other countries, it affected the food and the culture.
Hmm.
And you should just know that, like you said, people don't want to hear you talk about that. You said you never really had a platform to do it. This is your moment. And you should also know that, all the people who I've told about this episode, they're like, hell yeah, I'm so in. This is going to be the best episode you've ever done. No pressure.
A lot taken. Well, I
Okay.
mean, kind of what we're like on along those lines. I think food is culture,
Hmm.
and cultures adapt and change over time. And a big thing of that is influence of whether, if a country is being occupied or people are fleeing their homeland or people are just moving, the one thing that they bring with them is food because it's a one sense of culture along with, for example, music that you can bring with you and have a sense of home wherever you are. So if you have to flee your homeland, if you can come together with your family, make a meal together, that's a semblance of home wherever you are. So in that sense, you have people, and colonialism is a perfect example of this, where countries are taking over as much as they can in the world. And they're kind of leaving imprints wherever they're at, and they're taking things with them as they go. For example, pistachios, which is everywhere now.
Hmm.
It's huge in Italian culture and Italian food, especially in Sicilian culture, Middle Eastern culture, and foods all over. But pistachios themselves were originated in like Iran and Afghanistan, but they're all over Italy and Europe. It's because the
Oh,
Romans conquered Iran, Afghanistan, Central Asia, and brought that back to Europe with them. And now, so much time has passed, we think pistachios are Italian, a Sicilian thing because it's so popular there. But no,
yeah.
it was taken from somewhere else and brought back. And that's actually the majority of fruits and vegetables that we eat today were originated somewhere else. And in the turn of the century, the United States government actually hired a handful of people to go out and search for those different foods and search for new generate or types of vegetables and fruits and bring them back, expanding the United States agriculture.
I didn't know that.
For example, Meyer lemons,
Hmm.
that's actually originated from China and was discovered by a guy whose last name was Meyer.
Okay. Actually, until I went to Italy, I didn't know this, but apparently there's different kinds of lemons that are used for different things.
Mhm.
I just feel like I wasn't cultured enough in food to know that. It's more of like all I really knew was food is good or it's not. I can read, I can follow a recipe, I can cook. I did come across the other day going back to the topic of pistachios, so gelato. There was this woman talking about how do you know which flavors are authentic versus commercial gelato
I think I
flavors.
saw that same
Did
video.
you?
Yeah.
I feel like whenever I talk about TikToks that I've seen, everyone's like, "Oh, I saw it too." So I'm like, the algorithm must just be having those ones up. It'd actually be interesting if maybe we can do a B-roll right here and then just show that for a second. See if we could find it. But pistachio gelato, you would think it would be green, right? Because when you get any pistachio flavored ice cream
Hmm.
in a Ben and Jerry's, let's say, it's gonna be green. But authentic gelato, it's not. It's gonna just be a cream color. Which if you actually think about the actual nut, that makes sense.
Yeah,
It's
if you
nothing
take
artificial.
like if gelato is made with milk
Mhm.
compared to ice cream, which is made with cream.
Mhm.
So yeah, imagine if you took pistachios, which is like a dull, earthy color, and mix it with milk, it's not going to be a vibrant, bright green.
Right.
So yeah, it's interesting though how in that kind of sense, things are mass produced and you kind of lose the sense of what it really is and what it should be and where it came from
Yeah.
on a mass produced level. And we can get in, I mean, that gets us all into flavor and flavor theory, which is a whole nother topic.
Right.
But that's, I think that's the issue with mass producing food. Kind of, it's the opposite from what we were talking about of somebody making food for their family or making food at home. You're mass producing it, it's purely sustenance at that point. You might be able to mass produce things that, you know, a quick, easy meal where I can heat up some pasta in the microwave and have that idea of an Italian dinner. But
Mm-hmm.
in reality, it's not the same. It's that mass
Yeah.
produced aspect that cuts out that human touch, like we were talking about earlier.
Right. And then also like a lot of actual like Italian food that people think that they're eating isn't actually authentic to the Italian culture at all. It's more
Hmm.
about like America has like commercialized this concept and like just gone with it, but it's not authentic at all. And that took me by like a lot by surprise when I went there. I did get teased a lot by my friends because I love sushi.
Hmm.
And so obviously like we're in St. Louis, Missouri. If you're having sushi here, you're not really anywhere close to any fresh water, so it's not going to be like the
No.
best. But I had sushi in Italy, which might sound funny because it's like there's all this Italian food, but it was my birthday and I don't care. I wanted sushi.
Hmm.
And it was the best sushi I've ever had
Because
because
they
it
have
was
access to
right.
fresh ingredients.
Yeah. One of the next guests I'm going to be having on my podcast, hopefully all should be well. She's a woman who I used to visit when I was in high school, and at the time she was 89, and this coming November she's going to be 100.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty incredible. And her dad actually was a professor of soil.
Interesting.
I'm sure it's a more professional term than that. That's just what we're gonna say because that's all my brain can remember at the moment. But he would study the soil and figure out like why our agriculture was the way it was, how to produce the best fruits and vegetables that you can.
Hmm.
But I mean, also I think like there's so many things wrong with like food in the US, like so many. But part of it is also that like let's say any fruit or vegetable you should not be able to get all year long. You just shouldn't.
Exactly. I mean, that's, yeah, access to fresh ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
And the United States has such like we have the closest access out of anybody else. I mean, we can find produce on our shelves that's relatively fresh year round.
Mm-hmm.
But to your point, doesn't mean you should. You should be able,
Right.
we should eat local. We should eat fresh, organic, homegrown things that are in season, especially if you want the real flavor, you want the taste. A tomato coming from Uruguay in January is not going to be the same as a tomato grown 100 feet away in July in St. Louis.
Right.
So,
But also, if you have food all the time, like if you know, like say strawberries are the best in the summer, but then in the winter they're kind of like shriveled and small.
mhm.
And it's like if you have food out of season, it has a lot of like hormones and like chemicals in it too. So it's not authentic fruit, even though you think you're being healthy.
I mean, you can even extend that to meat and poultry as well.
Yeah.
The, you know, the entire agricultural business is built up on how large can we make it in the shortest amount of time. So they want to grow corn as large and as quick as possible. They want to grow chickens as big and as quick as possible with the biggest breast possible. So it has the highest meat, gets the biggest price. I mean, if you look at a chicken today that's mass produced from, for example, Purdue Farms versus a roaster chicken from 100 years ago, the roaster is going to be about this big, and the Purdue Farms chicken is going to be about this big. It's going to be 3 times the size, and it's the same chicken. Well, I mean, it's a different strain type of chicken, but they're producing things to grow quicker and faster and larger. So that meat is just filled with water and hormones as
Mm.
opposed to other one with just flavor.
It's so gross when you actually like think too hard about it. And then I also heard that you're not just like what you eat, but you are what you eat eats.
You are your
Mm.
food's food.
Right.
Yeah.
That is a much better way to say it. I'm gonna start saying it like that from now on.
But that's true. I mean, yeah, you eat a chicken that's essentially ate crap its entire life. The chicken's not going to be any better than what it's eating.
Mm.
So I mean, that's the biggest difference is that, again, back to the mass produced. respect idea that it's all for profit unless for the actual product.
I don't know. It's crazy to me. But back to talking about how like when people sometimes whether it's like on their own or maybe they're forced to leave a country, they'll take the food with them. So like I think if you want to call us a culture, if any culture, religion, group of people has gone through that, like Jewish people have been kicked out of so many countries
Hmm.
so often that like it's so interesting to me when people like ask like what's like a Jewish food, and it's like other than the stereotypical like breakfast bagels, lox, and cream cheese, or maybe saying challah, like so much of our food, like there is so much goodness that we have, but we just kind of take the best of every culture that we've been in and we've just created
Hmm.
really good stuff. So like for example, a lot of like Israelis, and I'm sure this comes from a lot of like Arabic culture, like when we have challah on Shabbos, we'll mix it in with like different toppings. So there'll be like baba ganoush, which is like an eggplant dip, or matbucha, which is like this like spicy tomato dip. And honestly, like you can literally just have a meal with like challah and a bunch of dips. The best thing ever.
I'm a huge dip fan.
Hmm.
I love dips. And yeah, it's the little taste, the little flavors that gives you a full meal, gives you kind of a sense of different places that they've come from, if you will.
Right. It is interesting to me how like certain people just I've had friends who've gone to Italy. We're gonna just go back to that because I think that's just like a big food country and people think of. And they complained that the food wasn't American enough. Like they're like, I couldn't get ketchup anywhere.
You're not allowed back. If you
Literally.
go to Italy and ask for ketchup, don't fucking come back.
But it's so silly. It's like you're not in America. Like the whole point is to travel and to like get culture. So I don't understand why people care. Like it's wherever you are, try to acclimate. Because I remember even before I went to Italy, I did research how to not be like an obnoxious American tourist and
Hmm.
had to try to like blend in. So even in terms of like fashion and what to wear, I looked that up ahead of time just so that I could be respectful. Because if I'm walking into a culture, I want to make sure you know, I know the way of the people.
Yeah, absolutely. But I have found too though that we'll always be picked out as Americans.
Well, yeah, I had blonde hair in Italy, like,
And I'm a tall guy with broad shoulders. Most Europeans are small and skinny.
right.
So, for example, I studied abroad in France when I was in school.
Did you really?
I did.
That's so cool.
And one of my friends who was Parisian, I was like, how do I look? Do I look French? I bought this outfit today. And she's like, no, you look American.
Mm.
I'm like, why? She's like, you're tall, your beard, your size. Like, she just went on and on. And it's like, no matter what you're going to do, you're going to still stand out. But it's the way you approach their culture and approach the differences is what they notice and what they appreciate. So I'm obviously an American. There's nothing I can really do to hide it. But if I
Yeah.
come in being that American, they don't like that because I don't care about your culture in that sense.
Hmm.
But if I come in open, accepting, wanting to learn, wanting to broaden my horizons, they're very happy. And most people are very happy to show you their way of life, what they do, what they see, what they like, and that kind of thing, as long as you're
So
open.
I have to ask because I'm so curious.
Hmm.
It's on my list actually is to go to France, specifically Paris.
Hmm.
Such a cliche, I know, but it looks so beautiful. I actually on my way to Italy, I paused like my stopover was in Paris. It was really brief, but I remember like as we were landing, I saw the Eiffel Tower. I started crying because I'm like, oh my God, it's real, which I know sounds super ignorant, but it's like there's such a difference when you actually get to see all these places that you just read about or saw in movies. To experience it for yourself is, I don't know, it's just a totally different feeling.
Did you go into the city?
I didn't leave the airport.
How much time did you have?
None. I literally was running
Oh,
to my plane. So, like, not enough.
I
But
was
I was
gonna
like,
say you
I'll
could
be
if you
back.
had 2.5 hours, you could get to the Eiffel Tower and back to the airport.
Really?
Yes, Charles de Gaulle and Orly is probably 45 minutes to an hour by train. Go straight there. I'd actually say go to Arc de Triomphe
Mm,
because then you can act when you get to the top, you can actually see the Eiffel Tower.
mm.
So my point or my thought is that's the best view because you can actually see the tower. Um, but no, so I studied abroad in Paris.
So, you were in Paris.
Mhm.
Was this high school or college?
This is college.
Okay.
Yeah, so I spent
For a semester
four
or?
months, 3 months.
Okay. And did you have like a few different countries that you can choose from or?
No, so I picked. I picked Paris because my
Hmm.
mom studied abroad in Paris, and I had taken French all throughout high school
No
and
way. That's
into
so
college.
cool.
I was actually going to be a French minor, but dropped it the last minute because didn't want to do it.
Okay.
Um,
Fair.
but I studied abroad in Paris because I really loved it. I thought it'd be a great place to go. I
Hmm.
loved the food. I loved the culture, the wine. Everything was a step back, a pace slower. So I
Love
really
that.
tried to just immerse myself in the culture.
Hmm.
Because I was there for so long, I didn't feel like I had to go see everything. So I could just take things as I saw them. If I have time or if I'm going to be nearby something that I want to see, I'd go see it, but just try to take things at their pace and really immerse myself.
So as you said, like when you go to other countries, they don't appreciate when you are just rude and abrupt. So a lot of people have said about Parisians that like they're pretty rude if you're not French, and like they, especially Americans, like they hate Americans.
Hmm.
Was that your experience?
I, I'd say no.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, you're going to see people that are mad at the world
Right.
and
That's
then therefore
anywhere.
mad at you for no goddamn reason.
Okay.
But if you appreciate their culture, if you go in and you want to talk to them or you try to speak French to them and you really make an earnest effort, they notice that and they appreciate that. You're not coming into a cafe and where's my ketchup?
Mm,
I want my
yeah.
ketchup. This guy, get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually had somebody ask me, they thought I wasn't a student because I was buying bread. And it was the one line I knew so well that I could just rattle it off. And she's like, "Oh, are
Say
you?"
the line.
Oh, I don't know it anymore.
No, that's not fair. Okay, fine, continue. Sorry.
It's a podcast about food, not language.
All right, fine. To be fair, I did not prep him. I had no idea we were going this tangent. I didn't know this fun fact about him. We're just going with the flow.
But I guess also, I mean, to that, it's like when I travel, I like to be more of an observer.
Okay.
I don't necessarily like to put myself into the mix. I like to kind of watch and
Yeah.
see and let their culture unfold in front of me. I also like to try to eat regionally, drink regionally.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're traveling throughout Italy or throughout France, you're going to be in a different wine region in almost every city.
Right.
So you want to try the different wines. You want to try, see what makes them different, as well as trying the foods that they created with those wines in mind. And everything kind of plays together. The foods, the cheeses, the wines, the meats, it's all very regional there and very specific, which I think is very important. And they agree to that too. I mean, not that it's my idea, but they create throughout Europe these different organizations that control territories and food and wine and drink that comes from those territories. So, for example, if you're buying French wine, you better bottles will have a little blue ribbon at the top that says DOCG. So that's d'origine contrôlée protégée, meaning like the origin is what it says it is. You're buying a Merlot, it's coming from the Merlot region. You're buying Bordeaux, it's coming from Bordeaux, as opposed to somebody just slapping a label on there. And they do the same with cheese, they do the same with bread. Italy has similar things. It's a way to keep those regional identities very protected and very sacred. That's why you don't see champagne coming from Oregon. It's sparkling wine.
That's really interesting.
Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah, I there's something about traveling which, always looked so interesting. And when I finally got the opportunity to do it, I told myself that I did it for my 26th birthday. And I feel like 26 is usually the birthday that people start to say, well, it's all downhill from here. Like you're off your parents' health insurance, right? So
Yeah,
you
that's
have
a
to
scary moment.
yeah, so my parents didn't have health insurance for me, so I never really had that
Mm.
moment. Turning 26 was just turning 26. But I was like, let's do something fun. So each year as I get older, instead of being like, oh, I'm older and like maybe feeling pressure to be in a certain place in my life by whatever age, I was like, I'm gonna plan a trip every single birthday. And this way, instead of being like, oh, I'm getting older, it's like, where am I going this year? What's my experience? And then I
Mhm.
could plan it. And um, so 26 was Italy, and then I realized that traveling is really expensive. So it's been a minute, but actually actually this worked out perfectly because this wasn't the plan, but this is God's plan. This is what
Mhm.
was supposed to happen. I'm 27, my next birthday, April 3rd, I'm going to be turning 28, and my best friend is getting married in Israel.
Oh, wow.
So it looks like I'm going to Israel.
That's exciting.
Two for
Where
one.
where
Where in
specific?
Israel?
Yeah,
It's a great question. I don't
you don't
know.
know?
All I heard was she actually, before she even got proposed to, she kind of had an idea that she was going to get engaged. And she didn't know when, though. And
Mhm.
she asked me, she was like, will you come to my wedding? And before she could even like really finish the sentence, I was just like, yes. I've never answered something so fast in my whole life. I was like, your wedding, Israel, like say less. I'll be there. I'm so excited. But maybe I'll do like I'll make my tickets at like stops at Paris or something. And this way I can get a
Yeah.
little taste.
Now, is your friend from Israel?
No, but her fiance is.
Okay.
Hmm.
So I assume he's got quite a bit of family over there.
All of his family's over there, which I think is really hard for him, you know, and I think eventually one day he'd love to move back.
Mhm.
But for now, they're here. And I'm grateful for that because, it's not very often that you have like a friend from childhood that stays like into your adult stages. And also, like, I've changed so much in terms of like, I grew up super orthodox and very religious. And like, starting when I was 23, I stopped being as religious. And it was a slow but intentional journey. And we've had a lot of similar things happen to us in our lives, which is really cool to have in a friend,
Absolutely.
you know?
Yeah, then you guys can kind of lean on each other
Mm-hmm.
for those experiences.
Right. If they're not exactly the same, but they're enough that it's like relatable. And there's a difference between telling someone your story and then looking at someone and be like, no, I get it.
Mhm. Well, I guess that's the difference between sympathy and empathy.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. So my grandmother used to say.
mhm.
So before we move on to the next topic, is there anything else, since this is your moment, to say what you want to say about food?
Well, I think maybe to close it almost, I think food is culture.
Mm-hmm.
Without food, you don't have culture. Without humans are all animals kind of have a culture, but humans truly created culture themselves with food and music, community. And I think that all stems from food. The idea of gathering around a table to eat together. It's a very human thing. No other species in this world cooks their food. We're the only people that take our food, cook it, and then sit around a table together and eat it. And I think that's an idea that is just very beautiful, something that brings people together, something that's above us. I think that's why I get hungry all day, every day.
Mm-hmm. I know. And Ben is our foodie at work. Whenever we need a place to go, you're our person who we're just like, we should ask Ben. Ben's gonna know.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll have to try a new place this week.
Okay. Let me know.
Okay.
There's actually eventually it's gonna open up. I don't know if it opens up yet, but Brendan said that there's like a Nigerian restaurant opening up.
There is. Yeah, I think he was working with them at downtown. I think they just opened up on
They're open.
Washington Avenue. Yeah,
Okay. Done.
sure. Let's do it.
All right. Just have to figure out if it's not too far from work. Anyone who's going to be listening from the first episode on, you're not going to just get to know me. It's really more about my guest, but there's going to be little sprinkles of what I like to call Nechama-isms. And so, fun facts. My favorite cartoon from when I was a kid was Scooby Doo. Like obsessed. Obsessed with Scooby Doo. Unfortunately, I don't have Shaggy's metabolism. I discovered that early on.
I think he had performance enhancing drugs.
Mm.
Emphasis on the drugs.
And he also is a cartoon character.
That's irregardless.
Right. Okay. But that's definitely like such a perfect segue because we started off our podcast talking about food. Scooby Doo is all about food, but it's also about mystery. And so I want to transition into conspiracy theories because everyone loves conspiracy theories. Some people,
Hmm.
it's more of like a fun, oh, I wonder if this is really the case. And some people are like diehard conspiracy theory addicts. Like they have all the facts. They've like made all the connections. Here's the proof. I'm not one of those people. I'm more of a, oh, isn't it fun and interesting? And so I actually had to do some research before our podcast to make sure that I knew what I was talking about so that I can carry my half of the conversation. But just to start, I thought something that was really interesting was that there's a difference between like actual conspiracies that have happened, and we can look back at like truly evil groups like terrorists or the mafia or like sex trafficking like groups, and we can see like the crimes that they have committed against humanity, right? And we have the proof. But the conspiracy theory is that we might have like really good evidence, but nothing is set in stone. So it's all hearsay and it's just a conversation.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
that,
I love conspiracy theories because I think they're just funny. I think they're
mhm,
fun. These harebrained ideas that people get, and then they find all the information to back it up.
mhm.
And the more you read their backup and their information, you're like, wow, is that real?
Yeah.
Did that actually happen?
I do have a friend who like stayed up one night till like I think 2 or 3 a.m. where she found like one girl on TikTok who like was like, no, Princess Diana is not dead. She's alive and well in Canada. Her whole death was like,
She's hanging out with Tupac,
yeah, something. Yeah.
which he's not dead.
Okay.
He's somewhere.
Like Elvis at this point.
At this point, Elvis was gone,
Mm-hmm.
or as they said in Men in Black, like Elvis just went home.
Mm.
They said he was an alien. But no, I think the whole Tupac, Machiavelli, all his those signs, everything. I like to think that he's still alive. I don't know the evidence necessarily. Some people do, but I just think that's a fun one.
Yeah. So then the question is, what is your favorite conspiracy theory?
It's another music one.
Okay.
Paul McCartney
Mm-hmm.
is not Paul McCartney. Paul
Okay.
McCartney died in the 60s, and the guy who's been Paul McCartney is a stand-in lookalike.
Mm.
And we might have to put up some B-roll for proof or showings, but like Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the cover is a funeral. It's entirely set up like a Cajun funeral, and Paul is wearing all black with OPD on his sleeve for officially pronounced dead. Then you go on to like the Abbey Road cover, and you can dive all into what they're wearing and the fact that so John is in white, the preacher. You have Ringo in black, the Undertaker. You have Paul as the corpse, barefoot, and you have George in blue as the gravedigger, bringing up the rear. You also have him smoking a cigarette with his right hand, and everybody knew that he was a left-handed person.
Mm.
So there's that. And then
Can you switch hands if you're a
yeah, I mean, yeah,
smoker?
you can switch hands, but
You have your hand.
I feel like typically you probably, if you're right-handed, you probably go to your right hand, I guess.
Okay.
But I mean, then you can go on to their songs, Revolution 9, the whole backwards, like playing it backwards, Turn Me On, Dead Man. It's a little ambiguous, but could be with all the other points, could play right into that. And then Strawberry Fields Forever. If you listen to the entire thing, the very end, the beat slows way down and it goes, I buried Paul.
That's really creepy.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, did someone explain this conspiracy theory to you, or is this something that you've put together?
No, I didn't put this together.
Okay.
I heard it and then like your friend went into a total rabbit hole, deep end, way into the night watching YouTube videos,
Mhm.
all that.
And now you're like, this is my
Yeah, now I'm
conspiracy theory
convinced.
that I like will stick to as my favorite one.
Yeah, if I ever run into Paul McCartney, I'm gonna be like, you're not him. You're not the
Okay.
guy.
I am a little embarrassed to say my last episode I had my coach on, and I mentioned about like the first man who like landed on the moon, and he was like, allegedly. And I, at the time, kind of just breezed past it because I didn't realize there was a conspiracy theory about that.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, the moon landing.
listen, listen. Listen, I live in a pink bubble and I'm very happy in here. It protects me from negativity, but it also means I'm pretty naive and there's just like things that I don't know about, which is why like a lot of my friends love talking to me because like whenever they bring up cultural references or tell jokes from like actual real comedians, I'll just be like laughing so hard and think that they're the funniest human beings. They're like, it's not my joke.
Mm.
But I love that you think it's mine. Cool.
Well, with the moon, I mean, there's even more conspiracies with that too, besides just, well, one, if you believe that they went, then it's like, why have they not gone back? You had a handful of successful missions in the 60s to go to the moon. Why have we not gone back? Why have we not gone and explored the dark side of the moon, the backside? What's there? Or did they go up there and find something and are trying to hide it?
Mm,
So I don't know. But then there's always a conspiracy. There's always a bigger
like a
conspiracy.
conspiracy on the conspiracy.
Yeah, it's like I saw something that was like, you hate talking to somebody who's like one of the real conspiracy guys because you say, hey, I don't believe that the moon landing was real. And they'll respond with like, oh, so you believe in the moon?
Oh,
So
okay.
like there's always another level of like, oh, I don't believe in the moon's fake for XYZ
Mm.
or flat earth shit or it just keeps going. Like people come up with the dumbest ideas and then they just go to the internet and back it up.
So I actually went on a different deep dive when I was looking into conspiracy theories last night. Yeah, I procrastinated. I waited till like the night before. I was like, let's keep it fresh. Um, it's really interesting to me more than like reading about conspiracy theories. I got more into the psychology of why do people believe in conspiracy theories, you know?
Why is that? I guess why do people?
So literally there are psychology studies like that have been written about this. And
Hmm.
so like first of all, to go to the extreme ends, like the people who are like die hard ones, like the ones you were talking about, like, oh, you believe in the moon and like those kinds of people, um, they're they actually connected with like schizophrenia.
Really?
Yeah, like people who just like are just so paranoid.
They just can't accept reality for what it is.
To a certain degree, I think like as human beings, we tend to try to make connections
Hmm.
and we tend to try to make sense of our world.
I think that's how we make sense. Wouldn't you
Right,
say? Like, I feel like you couldn't make sense if you don't have, I guess, an understanding or a
right. And so
connection.
sometimes the way, unfortunately, human beings are is we don't necessarily tend to be like drawn towards the positive. We tend to be drawn towards negative. And so instead of maybe taking accountability or trying to change the situation we're in, it's much easier to look at a group of people and be like, ah, they're all conspiring against us. It's one big evil plot,
Oh, I'm not rich, but those rich people are rich. Well, they must be lizard people.
right? The
Otherwise, I
lizard people one I just heard about, that's so weird to me.
think those are fun. And the videos of like, Hillary Clinton blinking sideways. I
Mm.
love those. And it's like, yeah, they there's a video or a clip of everybody in a weird out of context way that you can say, so and so is a
I mean,
lizard.
there's no denying that, like, when you reach that kind of power, whether it's like political celebrity status or just like wealth, I just think you have to go a little crazy, right?
Hmm.
Because, like, I remember I heard once that, like, money, I think the sweet spot was between what, like 80 and maybe 150 grand to 150 grand a year. And if you make less, then you're in trouble.
Hmm.
If you make more, then it's just like it's stupid money. Like you just don't know what to do with it. And that's when people get caught up in stuff. So I'm sure there's like a lot of stuff that we don't know about. I would love if we could find the clip. There's this comedian, don't remember his name. I'm so, so sorry. But if I find the clip, then at least he'll get his recognition. But he was talking about how like he'll meet people and they'll say, yeah, I don't believe in conspiracy theories. Period. The end. Not one. And he's like, really? Like, no conspiracy theories? It was not Kevin Hart. I love Kevin Hart. Um, but it was just this guy that was saying, like, listen, he's like, in the end of the day, are all of them real? Probably not. But there's no way that there aren't some that have some facts to them because he's like, I'm a dad and I have a son who I'm in charge of. I don't tell him the truth all the time.
Hmm.
So he's like, imagine if you have governments or like world leaders, you think they're going to tell the people the truth all the time? No.
I have no time for. Like if you're sexist or homophobic or if you don't believe in conspiracy theories, just don't understand, how do you not believe in any conspiracy theories? I understand not all of them, not most of them, but you don't believe in any conspiracy theory? You just think the government's just batting 1,000 and telling us the whole truth? That's a strong stance to take. And again, as I said before, I don't like talking about politics on stage or off stage. So I don't like talking about things I don't feel like I'm truly knowledgeable in. But I do know this. Our government is placed in charge of all of its people. I'm a father who's been placed in charge of just one son. And I lie to that nigga all the time.
They're not. They're going to
They
cover
hide
up.
it for years, and then, like all the alien shit, just kind of slip it back into conversation years later. By the way, we did have aliens. We did know about them.
That blows my mind. I'm like, the thing is like, I just think it's very interesting that that's coming about right around the corner from elections.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
I think media is it's all a cycle. It's
Mm.
all planned. It's all timing. When one thing pops up, I feel like there's also something going on in the background they don't want you to know about. There's a puff piece that's taken over all of the news. Maybe that's a conspiracy. That when the media comes out with something that's really bright and shiny, maybe there's something dark and dusty behind it that they don't want you to see.
Yeah. Makes me kind of sad. I did survive 27 years in my little pink bubble, but recently I feel like I've been noticing that there really are just like some really shady stuff going on in the world.
Hmm.
It makes me really sad.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you start opening up to like all the other shit that's going on or going down.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's some dark shit that people just think they can get away with.
And they do sometimes.
They do quite a bit, probably more often than not.
Yeah. I would say just I do want to bring up the article that I read though because it's so interesting. It was talking about like what can you do to, obviously when you talk about like conspiracy theories, it starts off fun. But there's some pretty dark ones. And the next thing you know, it's like doomsday. And there's these evil group of people who run the world. So what's the point and what's the hope? And the next thing you know, like especially our generation, like mental health is such a concept that people are like struggling with. So how do you like keep yourself in track?
Hmm.
So there's a little takeaway in this article. Um, there's a lot of reasons like why people believe in conspiracy theories, but I think, sometimes wanting to find reason and also as our generation, I feel like unfortunately moves away from like organized religion and faith, people need something to rely on. And so you'll find a lot of people will either want to find like the logical facts or they're going to be like the universe and law of attraction. You know what I mean?
Which in itself is
You
that's
think it's a conspiracy?
no, I was going to say it's a
Oh, it's
form.
going to be
I
like,
mean, it's
what?
a form of religion. You can get away from organized religion, but if you turn to the universe and a higher power of any
Mhm.
kind that you're speaking towards, it's the same idea. But it's also comes back to what we were talking about before of an idea of community, of a grouping of like-minded people that can work through things together because they have a shared identity.
Yeah. Well, community is huge. I
Hmm.
mean, that's why Facebook groups are so popular because people are searching for like-minded individuals.
Hmm. Well, even before Facebook groups, like for example, I live on the Hill, and the Hill
Hmm.
is a very large Italian community. It's been an Italian community for years, generations, since the Hill was clay mines, and they built the town of the Hill for the workers of those clay mines. And
I
it,
didn't know that.
yeah, so at the bottom of the hill, there was all those clay mines down there on Manchester and by the river down there. And so the workers would work all day at the clay mines, and then they walk back up the hill to their houses. Ergo, the hill. So that's why it's called it as such. But when the Italians came, they brought their culture with them. They brought their community with them. They set up churches. They set up grocery stores. They set up restaurants, community centers. They brought their sports. They brought soccer and bocce ball. They brought their culture with them because even though they're leaving their homeland, they're not leaving their identity behind.
I love that. That's really cool.
Mhm.
So this is what this article says.
Sorry to steer us away from conspiracies
No, I
music.
love that. It's just a conversation. Like there's no rhyme or reason to it. You just flow with whatever you want to talk about. It said with conspiracies, like just to keep your mental health in check, fact check.
Mhm.
Just because someone says something, don't just be like, oh, it must be the way it is. Like, do your own research. We all have smartphones for the most part. Like, it's not hard to start looking things up. Also, practice healthy skepticism. It's okay to be skeptical. It's okay to be like, yeah, okay. Have fun with it. Go with it. Don't be like a stick in the mud when you're having conversations with people. But, you know, don't take everything to heart. You don't have to internalize every conversation you have. Critical thinking. I thought this one was funny. It said diversify your network. If you hang out with people of all beliefs, religions, races, and political parties, we can all learn something from each other. I was like, wow, it's just like my podcast.
Oh, exactly. But and that itself is, I think, one of the issues with social media
Okay.
is you have the ability to follow whoever you want.
hmm
So more often than not, you're going to follow somebody that you agree with,
Yeah.
somebody who's producing things that you like and want to see more of. You're not going to follow somebody that you don't agree with or an opposite opinion. So now you've essentially curated a brand for yourself that just furthers your previous views. So I think that's why this podcast is so important, learning from other people that you wouldn't have normally talked to, that broadens your horizon, broadens your sense of scope.
And I think the most important thing, I mean, obviously, we're starting the conversation here on the podcast. But if this is a goal in mind that all the listeners will take away into their own communities, into their own conversations, their own friend groups, is the same way that you approach traveling, where you kind of like to observe, watch how people are, not impose yourself. Like, let's try to be a little less American and obnoxious in that way, and just learn to really listen to other people because everyone has
Mhm.
something to teach you.
An idea of selflessness.
hmm What a concept
What a
in
concept.
today's day and age. So it wouldn't be an episode without me saying the Hebrew quote from where all this stems from. So you said a little bit of French. Now I get to say a little bit of Hebrew. So the quote is Ezehu Chacham Halomed Mikol Adam, which means one who is wise is one who learns from everyone. So I like to ask each of my guests if they can share something, whether it's a quote or a life lesson, something that was like impactful for you that you want to share with all the listeners.
Ho bisogno di mangiare qualcosa.
All right
It's
now.
Italian for I need to eat something.
Ooh, oh, I love that. That's amazing. Well, thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for having me.
Before we let everybody go, is there anything that you prepared that you didn't get to share that you'd like to share now?
I'm hungry. I'm ready to eat.
I have a fresh loaf of challah for you before you leave.
Fantastic.
You're welcome. Well, thanks for coming. Is there anything that the community can do to help support you?
Eat local, eat fresh, not Subway, but eat fresh ingredients, eat
hmm
local, spend time in the community, go meet somebody, go have a new conversation with a random person.
Love that. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
This is awesome. All right, guys, another week, another podcast episode. Um, I hope you guys have a great week. We're on all the platforms. You can follow us wherever you want to. Obviously, if you want to see the video format, if you're just listening, go back, watch this again. It was a great episode. And like I said, eat local this week. Talk to some new people, be open minded. Have a great week. Let's get it. Let's go.